Running Wild with Christine, Sex, Success, and Other Slippery Rabbit Holes. Welcome to episode 26 with Brooke Takhar from Miss Teen USSR. Today we'll cover all kinds of things, so just listen in. Hi Brooke, how are you?
Hi, I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
I'm very happy to have you on. I guess I usually tell my listeners how we met.
Yes.
But we met half an hour ago.
Right? In the most 2018 of ways, through social media, and you reached out and made me feel like I was a better person than I actually am. So, as I was saying earlier to Christine, I'm not sure I'm completely qualified to be on here, but if you want me to talk about myself, that is never, ever a problem.
I totally agree, but I was telling you also when we were prepping, and we talked about this on a few of the episodes, the imposter syndrome is like rampant. Every single guest is like, I don't know if I'm quite like the person you're like, I don't know if I'm an expert on this, or but like, this is not the point.
No, and I guess we all have stories to tell, yes, and experiences to share, and opinions that, you know, we feel strongly about. So conversation, that's what I can offer you.
Yes, and that's all that I'm asking of you, so that's convenient.
Excellent. And she's given me wine, so we're good to go.
Oh yeah, if you hear clinking, that's what that is typically with me. So I found you through a local search of like my Twitter sphere and social media presence. You're a freelance social media manager.
Yes.
Blogger.
Yes.
And as of recently, stand-up comedian.
Yeah, a little bit of like pretty much all the different ways you can be like, hey everybody, look at me. Yeah, so I've written since I was a kid. I recently entered some journals and diaries from when I was like 9 years old, and God bless you. God bless you, young Brooke. I'm so sorry about your life. So wrote my whole life, and then became an adult and realized I needed to figure out a job, and then trying to figure out like how do you turn something you're passionate about into a living, and when it's the creative arts, but you're also at heart, I think I'm an introvert who's a little bit shy. So sitting behind the computer and helping people do their social media on the side was a fantastic way to do that. And then writing for myself. And then once I had a kid, suddenly your world explodes and turns inside out. And you kind of realize, like, you know, in today's day and age, like, I think we all help each other as much as we can by sharing, you know, experiences that maybe in the past people would feel shame about or embarrassment about. And there is still a big stigma of, you know, like how, you know, I need to be a better parent. I'm fucking this up. And, you know, back in the day, you know, like my mom, for example, did the best she could. And, you know, I think there was also still some magic back then because you didn't know what your neighbor was doing. So that comparison game and the mommy wars, none of that was happening. But having social media and having the internet and having women and men be honest about, you know, the challenges of being an adult, being a creative adult who suddenly has a child and maybe kind of not regrets, but I feel like the second a kid pops out of your vagina that there should be a hardwire reset in your brain so you don't remember all the free time that you... Can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear all you want.
I thought so. I just want to make sure. But all the free time that you fucked away, you know, like I used to be bored. I just, you know, want to jump in a time machine and just shake that woman, because it's funny how like a creative peak happened for me with a child, and you know, I went back to school and all of a sudden had all these grand plans, and then blogging became a thing, and then oh my god, it's not, you can't just write and hit publish and then walk away. No, then you gotta promote the shit out of yourself.
I fucking wish that was true. Everyone's like, so how hard was writing? I'm like, that was easy. This is hard.
Right? The promotional part and trying to be authentic and just wanting, you know, because I think, you know, most of us, all of us write to be read. And, you know, like,
even if it's two people, like, who tell you, hey, I read that and this meant something to me, or that made me laugh, or that made me cry.
Exactly. You know, like when I was a teenager and I lived in the suburbs and my friends and I were punk rock kids in an uptight high school, and we would take the 351 downtown to Vancouver from White Rock and go hang out on Seymour Street where all like the music was and the bands hung out and all the cute boys at the record stores. We had a zine, so this is pre-internet, and you know, we would like surreptitiously leave it by the door and run away, and then but we would get fan mail, and oh my god, like greatest days of my life. So to be read, to connect with people, that is, you know, like even when I'm super tired and just would rather be watching anything on Netflix, but you know, just putting yourself out there. You know, I'm super fortunate as an adult to have amazing women in my life, both in real life that I can hang out with when my child is sleeping, but also just connect with online. You know, like, so. But yeah, so all to say, I was blogging, and then, you know, the last election happened in the States, which it changed a lot. A lot of my blogging friends are American women, and all of a sudden they realized they needed to use their online presence to do much more important things than tell stories about their kids, which I am 100% behind. But just kind of refocus, like, why am I writing? Like, what's the purpose of this? And, you know, like, I think that I need to make this a bit more meaningful for myself. And then, not to say what I did next then was world changing, but it kind of, that segued away from writing to being invited to do a few speaking engagements. And I think, you know, you've done right? And I don't know, to get that immediate response. Yeah,
it's a completely different story. You're not like hitting publish and going straight to sleep so you can sleep the next 8 hours instead of like checking your phone every 30 seconds for nothing happening. Like, you have people looking at you.
Exactly. And it's terrifying, and it's like the worst shits of your life leading up to it. But to get to make people laugh or cry or whatever, anything, that it's like having, you know, like it's like having a conversation with a friend in person versus one online. So having that chance to, you know, to
connect,
exactly, and to read my writing, and then I was like, well, what about stand-up? And honestly, like, I've done very few brave things in my life, and it's not like I have a bucket list, but doing stand-up is, you know, like, I should put that on my tombstone. It is something that I never thought that I would have the balls to do. Talent, that's still questionable. But, you know, like, I've done it a few times, made a few, if I make anyone other than my friends and family laugh, that feels like a triumph. And I think that's probably what people reach out to me now the most about, is like, oh my God, I could never do that. And then I always say, you 100% can, right? You're not going to become, you know,
a statue of stone.
Exactly. You're not going to die, and you're also not going to become the next Sarah Silverman, but you will get off that stage and
have that adrenaline.
Oh my God. It's like heroin for your soul. It's incredible. So, so I think that, you know, by being involved in all those little worlds has been amazing for my creative spirit, and then has brought me to your living room.
And for once, she's in my actual living room, not just my virtual one, which feels awesome.
Exactly. I am actually here.
And I have a living room, which is a huge change for me.
Absolutely. Furnished. We're not even on the floor.
But yeah, so when we were discussing what we wanted to talk about, we have so many ideas, so I'm sure you'll be back on for other episodes.
I can talk.
But I thought it would be interesting to sort of like compare our experiences in different sort of like moments in life that we've shared or not shared.
For sure.
And I know that in your comedy bits, you talk a lot about being a kid in the 80s and how that experience in terms of like, let's call it sexual awakening, is different than mine might have been or other people's.
Yes, for sure. I think, there's a million factors. The fact that for pervy kids, which I may have been a pervy kid, there was no internet, right? I think that the internet is like the great gaping maw, and as far as like how, you know, you come about sexually and what you discover, how you feel, how you see what you like, how comfortable you are. You know, like I think that, but I still think being like a good perv is still kind of like,
He's still slightly uncomfortable with it.
Right? And especially when it's girls. But I think if we all just, you know, put out there, like, sex is very interesting.
Yeah.
You know, in all the different ways that it exists and where it started. But yeah, so I was, you know, I'm born in 1977. So when, you know, like when I was much too young, my brother and I would watch, you know, like all the like the sleepaway camp movies and all, like, you know, like all the movies that you try and watch now and you're like, Jesus Christ, like Biff and Back to the Future is sexually assaulting Leah Thompson in the front seat and my 8-year-old's beside me. I'm like, okay, so when you're gonna need to pause this and have a good long chat about how this is not okay. And so, you know, I'm like a weird age right now where I can look back and be like, this is why I feel this way about something sexually related. And shit, that is actually super flawed. And I need to reevaluate that because now I've got a daughter. Yeah. And I feel like that is one of the biggest responsibility in my life. But I'm trying to raise her, you know, to have confidence, to, you know, to be who she is and feel the way she is. And, you know, express when something's not okay. But it's so interesting because I'm not a pushover and I'm not a princess, but she still has these just genetic things in her that, you know, like that she will kowtow to. I don't even know if that is a word. I don't know how to spell it. But, you know, like she will go along with certain things or relate to peers that are boys in a way, and I'm like, man, this is so hardwired in us. And I've done my very best to, like, with body image stuff, to be very kind to myself in front of her, like all these things, and yet she still will, you know, she'll say to a friend of mine something about her big belly, and then my heart explodes into 1,000 pieces, and I'm like, but I've exposed her to all body types. I've never talked shit about my belly. Like this, you know, there's a lot of work to do, But
you're not, this is the thing, you're not the only influence. Like, she's out in the world, like, and the world is a powerful system that pollutes your personal effort as much as you try not to let it, you know?
It totally does, but, you know, 2018 is very different from back when I was younger. You know, like the magazines that I read and the actresses that I liked. And the TV shows I watched all presented really one kind of version of beauty and, you know, how, you know, to carry yourself, what your style should be. And I bought in hard. But then also was super disappointed. I thought high school was going to be like Babysitter's Club and Archie comics. And it really fucking wasn't. And I think that if you are a pop culture kid, and this is dangerous for my kid too, because she can access all the pop culture, is that if you get in too much, I think that real life is really disappointing, you know? Like, even I'm a sucker, I'll watch, like, a romantic comedy.
Oh, God, yeah, we all do that.
Right? And then...
you're like, where's my Prince Charming? And you're like, the fuck, I know this don't exist. Like, what is this thought in my brain? Like,
right? And so we know full well, but then I think that's almost like our kryptonite is women will watch romantic comedies and then forever lament the fact that our life isn't like that. And then dudes, you know, to be super general, will watch porn and forever lament that not all girls' vaginas look like that, or that
not everyone can deep throat them.
Exactly, or that we're okay with having, like, hair everywhere, when in fact, when you get a hair in your mouth when you're giving a blowjob,
it makes you want to hurl. It's so
like
much.
A dog with peanut butter. You just gotta try and get it out, because if it goes halfway down your throat, you're fucked. Done. Yeah. Right? But we power through and persevere because, again, that old school thing of, like, you know, like, I gotta
stay attractive right now for this guy's fucking hard on, because otherwise the world will end.
Right? All these pressures. So, all to say that I want my 8-year-old to be able to get a fucking hair elastic and not feel bad. But that is, you know, like a million years from now.
Sure, that'll come. Yeah,
right.
No, a million years. Yeah.
God. I know she grows up and all these things, but yeah. So it is. I think it's good. It's good for my brain to know that I can't just pass on shit from my childhood to her, because she's not living in those times, and it was flawed as hell. But yeah, so
But, like, how do you think that, like, what for you is the biggest realization now of, like, the flaws? Is it, like, the contrast between, like, what you, like, read in your early sort of pervlet or like
My Jackie Collins
or and what you saw on like film or on screen, and then what you experienced, was that like for you like the biggest like?
That's a great question. I think that being an isolated kid of, like single mom, having a younger brother, so like just really living life vicariously through pop culture, television, movies.
I was the same,
right? And so I'm trying to like give my kid all these extracurricular opportunities, because also like to expand her friendship circle, to be friends with little boys early on. Like, I didn't have a good male friend until I was well into my 20s, because I thought that boys were just like I was that dude,
like alien.
Exactly, totally. Like was it John? What's his fact? Like, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. But I literally thought like
they were from Mars.
Yes, I'm like, I know you poop and I know you peep, but it's out of different places, and I don't know. Like, I was scared of the unknown.
Yeah,
and I think that just made me really non-adventurous and very shy, and I had like, I watched Dazed and Confused, and I was like, this does nothing for me, because I couldn't relate to it at all, because I denied myself an amazing high school experience, just being really like shut off and like, oh no, like I can't possibly go there, I won't have any, like how often, like I know people always say like, oh, I would never go back to high school. I would go back to high school and
do it differently,
and then go to the parties and talk to the boys that I liked. Like, what, just being in your own head at an early age is also really, like, it's just denying yourself things. So maybe that's why, combined with like, once you're a bit older, you're like, I don't have many years left. So things that I would turn down because I was like, fear can't be a guiding principle in life. And that's another thing I want my kid to be like, I like, oh, the thought of this makes you scared or nervous, or you don't think you can do it.
Do it anyway.
Exactly. And when you're 8, you don't want your mom to say that. You want her to just be like, well, let's just cuddle and maybe we can breastfeed again.
Yeah.
We can figure that out. Which she 100% would do. But yeah, so that's another like shitty part of parenting, is that you want them to have the life that you didn't, and then I think you just roll the dice and you just watch it happen. They have to make the mistakes. They have to, like get hurt.
That's the thing. But I think that's like part of what makes you now who you are, is like those things that hurt you, and so I think rationally that, but like his mother probably like is like, get those rational thoughts out of my head.
No, but it's so true. You can't govern much. You can just set them up with the best foundation as possible, and like make them feel like the world is their oyster. Encourage them,
but not too much. Because I have a beef with that. Well, because when I was raised by a single mother and a younger brother, and like
really,
and my mom had to work so much that I basically like took care of my brother and whatever. So it was very like, you're the responsible kid. You got to do the things, But like in parallel at the same time, like the world is your oyster. Like you need to like be a high achiever and like go for the things that you want. And I was kind of like, I don't know what I want. Stop making me want to achieve. No, even though I'm like built to be an overachiever, because that's just my personality. I think it's genetic.
Yeah.
But when you don't have a place to put it, it's kind of like, thanks for all the encouragement to sink or swim. Like I don't know where,
It's true. It kind of feels like you're stalling out and then beating yourself up.
Yeah.
For that. I feel like I was like a young housewife at 11. Like I asked my mom for my 11th birthday to teach me how to iron. Like,
who the fuck asks that?
Brooke Takhar did that. So I feel like when were I kind of missed on like the wild and crazy shit. So maybe that'll be when I'm 50 and I will be out there embarrassing everyone.
It's all good. I'll be around. I'll gladly join along.
Okay, sounds good. But I think like world is your oyster, meaning that there are lots of opportunities out there, and encourage her like to travel, like
try things.
And I know that you're a big traveler, because the second you go somewhere that is out of your comfort zone and there's no backup necessarily, and there's no there's no familiarity, I think that's when you really figure out who the fuck you are. Yeah. What you want, who you are, what you're capable of.
Yeah.
If you're in a corner and, you know, just like I traveled, and like when I was 22, like sold my car, went to Australia, met up with a friend, and then just traveled by myself. So having to make small talk with strangers, not my favorite thing, but I did it, and slept in co-ed hostels, and
I always pick the co-ed ones too,
right? And never ever felt in danger. I mean, it's not like I was prancing around, you know, or super attractive at the time.
I was prancing around totally in my underwear, and nothing bad happened to me. Like, maybe it's a miracle, maybe I should be thankful. But sometimes you just also, like, that's where your gut instincts come in. That's when things kick in, where you go, ooh, here I can, ooh, here I can't. Like,
right? Or you get a feeling, and
start listening.
Exactly, and that is speaking of that, that's another thing that I try and instill in my kid is, like, if you have a weird feeling and you tell me about a situation, a person, an alley, whatever, like, there have been times where I've ignored it, and luckily, you know, nothing bad has happened. And I don't know if I listen to too many true crime podcasts, but I always think, like, it is a miracle that I am alive. I should be murdered. But it's just, no, if you just listen to murder stories, of course you're going to think, well, I'm next. That's just how this works. But really, what's the murder percentage of white bloggers in Vancouver? Probably not that high. But yeah, having, like, a gut instinct and just, you know, feeling a room, like, knowing, like, and also, you know, just kind of being aware. I wasn't a big partier either, so I've never had that, like, oh shit, I was blackout drunk and oh my god. So, you know, hopefully she will take care of herself.
But even if she was, like, I am that person. I don't know why I'm thinking in the past. That. She says with a glass of wine in her hand on a Monday night. I think even in those moments, like, you learn, and hopefully nothing bad happens to you, because that is when bad shit happens. But I think that's the fine line between, like, you know, the balance between being afraid and saying no to everything, and being reckless and saying yes to everything, or just running along. Like, that balance is hard to achieve as a human, let alone as a parent, to instill into someone else's humanness.
I know, right? I also feel like I maybe know, like, maybe 2% of the parents I know are qualified. Like, we're all just doing our best, right?
Yeah.
Like, just because, like, really, like, I tried to go to, like, a mommy group when my kid was first born, and I just was like, only thing that you and I have in common is that we had unprotected sex at the same time. Like, you know, like, the person you are before you have a kid is the person you are after.
Yeah.
You know, you parent as you are. So, yeah, it's the craziest, dumbest, weirdest job in the world. But yeah, so you just hope that, like, okay, well, you know, hopefully I can share some experiences with her that will help. But then I also know some kids are like, well, my mom did that, so I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah, for sure. And you never know which kid you got, so.
No, exactly. And genetics and, like, so many things at play.
Yeah. But how do you think, so going back to sort of, like, the difference between then and now, how do you feel that it's different? Like, maybe tell us a bit more about your experience when you started saying yes to, let's say, like, sexual experiences and stuff like that. What was, like, the predominant
that's a great question.
Factor? Because I know when we were prepping for this, you were kind of like, well, the 80s was a fucking scary time for sexually active people.
It was, right? And like kissing a boy at a party was like, oh, I mean, I wasn't an idiot, but it felt like that. You know, if you were born of that time, that casual sex was, you were going to die. Like, that, if you had any brains about you, that's what it kind of felt like. So now, so just being my age and seeing, like, you know, sex trends happening, and, you know, knowing some, like, younger people nowadays, feels like, well, like, all the scary stuff is still there, but the attitudes have somehow changed. And I don't know if, again, it's just because of my generation, or, you know, just, you know, is it because Magic Johnson still fucking looks great, and, you know, like, HIV isn't something that is
an immediate death sentence,
right?
Yeah.
And, you know, like, it's, I think that sex and money are two difficult topics, but which is why I really thought it would be cool for me to come on here, because it's, you know, like, I think that more, like, I don't think there's a problem with dudes shooting the shit about conquest and stuff, but for girls to talk about, you know, like things that have worked for them, things that haven't, to talk about like the tools for anal sex, like to share all these, whether you're single, married, like whatever the status, like we share so much about like, hey, this whatever, what are those magical one pot crock pots or whatever, no problem, like showing pictures of like our amazing meals and that, but is your marriage suffering because, you know, like you've lost that libido spark or whatever? Do you need, you know, like to use these tools? I feel like, you know, like you've just got to be, I think, curious.
Sharing,
curious and aware. And if you start to back away from that,
then you're that kid again at the party who's sitting in a corner.
Exactly. And you're going to regret that. And I think it's also really interesting that as you get older, I haven't researched that much, and maybe this is an urban legend, but I don't think so. I think that women reach sexual peaks later. And also it's just...
But I think that's only because we're freaking socially conditioned not to like explore.
That absolutely could be it, because I think, you know, like the middle-age crisis for men can also be a thing.
Yeah.
But is it because of all these factors, or is it because you're just bored and like, oh, well, there's a name for this, so I will just buy into it. But
what did we get? We got menopause.
Right? I can hardly wait. And maybe is that a woman's body was saying, okay, dude, the clock is ticking. You only have so many years left of any moisture down there. So you need to get the engine revving.
Yeah.
Pardon me. But yeah, so...
No, and I think that's really a big thing for me that I'm sort of like struggling with. Like, it's fine, but it pops into my head every now and then that, you know, I'm so, especially now since the book's been out and the podcast has been out and people are listening and I'm having these super intimate conversations, half of the time forgetting that I'm recording and posting it because I don't listen to them like more than, you know, when I'm typing the stuff in and then it kind of goes into the ether and I forget about it. But now I'm having like these encounters, whether it's, you know, with hookups or with new friends or with podcast guests where there's this like assumption that I'm game or down for everything, and I'm like, I mean, the probability is pretty high, but you know, like even just on dating apps, people are like, oh, what's your biggest kink? And I'm like, I'm actually pretty vanilla. Like, I mean, maybe not to your standards, but to mine, like, because I'm exposed to so much like sex positive, kinky, you know, and also sex blogging, sex writing, adult toy reviews. Like, when I look at everything that's out there, I'm like, I use maybe like 30% of what's out there.
Right.
Which 30% is huge for somebody who uses none of it, you know?
Bad.
And so it's just kind of like this weird fractioning of like my social circles where like I can't say that I masturbated in some of them, and in others, you know, I can't say that I don't enjoy anal.
Yes.
It's like, can we just not like put any freaking measures on these things? Like, what the fuck do we do?
Right, and I think, and it's for you, I think making yourself that vulnerable and speaking about things that not everybody is comfortable with, which I think is more on them, you know, like, and I think, but you're also not an idiot. You're not going to ask the guy who just made your coffee, you know, like, when's the last time you jerked off? Right, of course, you know, like, because there are people that do that, and it's just like, yeah, that's just too extreme.
That's like, you know, that's like the vegans that you don't like because they shove it down your throat. No. Not all vegans are like that, but those who are, I'm like, dude, and I love going to a vegan restaurant, and I'm like not super happy with my meat eating habits, but whatever.
No, exactly. But it's more like if we all just shared, like, because I know if you like, I truly believe that if I ate more plant-based, for example, I'd probably feel amazing. I think it would be better for me. And if that happened, I would tell my friends in a fun way, the same way I'd be like, hey, you should watch this shit on Netflix. I loved it. But it wouldn't be like, so I just need to follow up with you about this. You know, like...
And also like, hey, random coffee guy, you should really stop eating or stop doing or start masturbating or whatever the weird things you're imposing on people. Like, that's not productive to anybody.
No, and I think, like most of us, well, if someone did that to me, I'd knee-jerk. I'd be like, I'm going to eat 7 steaks for dinner just because of you. There's some people, you know, like online where I'd kind of like hate watch some of their stuff like, while eating something that they say I shouldn't be, which, I mean, ultimately, I'm losing that the game, but whatever.
Feels like winning.
It does. It's like there's still, like, you like to think that you're open, but there's that part of you that's just like, nah, fuck that.
I love bacon kind of thing.
I thought for for years that I couldn't eat it because I have celiac disease. I was diagnosed when I was like so young, and back in the day they didn't know that much, and I thought I couldn't have bacon. And one day I just like, I'm gonna Google this shit. Like things have changed.
Sounds like I could have bacon,
right? And I could, but my kid doesn't. I was like, what? Like even when I cook it and you smell it. And then I have to eat all of it because you're having none? Okay, maybe it's not so bad that you don't like bacon.
No, but it's going back to like the tough stuff. I think it's very interesting how, you know, we like to pit people or things or eras against one another, and there's actually quite a bit in common most of the time, and the differences are actually rooted in similarities. Like we're still a very fear dominated society. Like that's the main driver of our international politics, of our national politics, of our relationship problems. Like I think fear is like this like looming thing, and it was funny when I started really advertising the fact that, you know, I think it's even my tagline on one of my dating apps, and label me lame, I don't give a fuck. It's like vulnerability as a strength. And people are like, wow, that's early. I'm like, whatever. Like, I make my own self barf a little. But that whole concept leads people to being like, someone wrote me the other day on one of the dating apps something like, I've been really trying to like focus on the fact that every time I've been hurt, I got back up.
That's fantastic.
Yes, but also be hurt though. Sit in the hurt. Like hurting is like being hungry. It's just one of the things that you feel. It comes and it goes.
Agreed. Don't
be afraid of that. And like it's the afraid of the hurt, not the afraid that you won't get back up. Because we all logically know that we like get over most things. I'm sure there are things that are very, very hard to get over, and pains that stay for a very, 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 very long time. But the fear is not conducive to either getting back up or feeling what you're supposed to feel and making decisions based on how you feel.
No, agreed, right? And, you know, staying in situations because they're familiar or not trying new things because they're scary. I mean, obviously there are degrees, but but there is that kind of like the, you know, the meme that's always, you know, like, I don't know, kind of just makes it seem like just get the fuck up and be happy. And it's like, well, but in order to, I don't know, like the very best days of my life have sometimes been surrounded by garbage ones. What, like, and there doesn't have to be anything dramatic, but you do need both sides of the coin to like
to remember,
right, and to feel appreciative of how amazing something is because you
remember
exactly. You dug yourself out of something, or suddenly like the winds change and like everything was coming. But if everything is always rosy and fantastic, I've met people who have never had a stress a day in their lives for whatever reason. They're always fucking douchebags, right? Like you need the struggle and to feel like garbage. And again, like, you know, it's like traveling, like to be in an unfamiliar emotional state. And when you're in it, it's fucking terrible. And you wouldn't wish it on anyone.
But then the next day you're on a beach with the wind in your hair, like in a surreal situation just because you hitchhiked with the right person. And they're like, how the fuck did I get so lucky? And it's literally the same 12 hours.
Okay, but I just need to let my mom know that I would not hitchhike because that's how women got murdered in the 70s. So literally I would never hitchhike, Mom.
But like now you can with rideshare. It's basically like digital hitchhiking.
I know. Now they say, right, like for women, like never get in the car with a stranger, blah, blah. And I was like, but that is kind of like, I mean, I do really need those services to come to Vancouver.
Oh my God, I can't live.
The taxi cabs, what is going on?
I've been here for a month and a half, and legitimately, it's, now that I have a car, it's kind of okay, and it's also leading me to drink less, which is, I guess, a positive.
So responsible of you.
But yeah. I mean, that was the one thing of growing up in the 90s is like my mom will gladly have 3, 4, 5 glasses and take the wheel. And I'm like, what the fuck? Did you not watch the ads on TV? Like that was like seared into my brain. It was like, you can't drive drunk.
Right.
Like,
the mad ads that you would see. But we also were sitting on like bench like seats without, you know, like my child's going to be in a booster seat till she's 12 now. That's basically the law. So we got away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but like that whole fuck, I just lost my train of thought.
So we were shitting on the taxi cabs of Vancouver.
Yes, that's right. Super related to what we started talking about. No, but like the whole concept that I mean, there's pros and cons everywhere. I don't want to be like preaching to anyone, and there are lots of reasons for which Uber sucks. But when you don't have a service that functions at all,
Yep.
that's when I have an issue. If cabs were practical and perfectly functioning here, I'd be like, all right, pay more, whatever.
Absolutely.
If it's a price difference, there are no fucking services here. Like, you might as well force people to drink and drive. Like, I've never seen in Europe, we have A, trains that run all night, B, like some kind of transit, C, Uber and taxis. And
Right.
I think none of my friends drive drunk. Okay, smaller distances, blah, blah, for those who know the difference.
Right.
But here, still in Vancouver, I see my friends, like, jumping in their cars after, like, 3 doubles. And I'm like, that's 6 drinks, not 3.
I know, right?
That's not...
And there's no excuse for it, but it literally, and especially like if you live in the suburbs and the last
there's no
train
alternative
is leaving, like, yes, it's not like society needs to make all the partiers happy, but let's just be realistic. Like, when you're an adult, if you want to stay home all the time and hang out at home, that's totally okay. I fucking love that for certain nights.
Yeah.
But if you want to go out and see a concert or go out for dinner or whatever you want to do, if you can't get home, like, and that's also super dangerous.
And also, you're forcing people to, like, live closer, pay higher rents, and then you wonder why we haven't come, blah, 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 blah. I could go on for this for hours. Anyway, let's stray away from our rabbit hole and back to the topic.
Sounds good.
So, we've covered the sexual awakening, the differences between, you know, that, and trying to instill sort of, like, healthy, at least reflexes into your daughter.
Yes. That's the goal.
And then I'm just like, I'm just curious of, like, the part where you, like, okay, so you have the part where, you know, you, even though it's dangerous and scary and you will probably die, you start having sex.
Eventually, yes.
And then did you get married pretty young?
I wasn't super young. I think I was just the year I turned 30.
Okay, so
married. So, you know, but I also feel like we watched, for my generation, we watched our parents get married very young and then typically start a family right away, which felt like the norm. But then I think that we realized, looking back, like, oh, wait a second, they didn't get to enjoy much of their, like,
Coupledom.
Yeah, that and the years where you have the most pep and energy and can stay up all night. Right?
Yeah.
Like, by having my kid when I was 33, I remember thinking, like, on day whatever when I was so sleep deprived, I didn't know what universe I was in. Like, if I had been 25 right now,
I would have totally been okay with this.
Exactly. But yeah, so had her at 33, and then because we were talking earlier about your IUD adventure.
Oh, yeah. If you guys have been following my social media recently, because of an insulin problem, so yeah, basically women's bodies are amazing, all that shit, but also your pancreas is dangerously close to your ovaries. So if you produce... Yeah, it's like right next to it. So if you produce, like me, I basically have the opposite of diabetes. Okay. Instead of not making insulin, I make 10 times too much.
What is your body doing?
So my body, when it gets carbs and sugars, glucose,
the delicious things,
it just, like, goes wee and makes a fuckload of insulin.
Okay.
Which is why I've lost a bunch of weight over the last couple of years, because I had to cut carbs and sugar, obviously, except for alcohol, because I'd rather have diabetes than stop drinking. That was, like, the recommended treatment, was to stop the glucose from getting into my body so that the insulin wouldn't do what it then does, which is, I'm going to explain secondfold. But basically, the diet was so that, you know, if I keep ingesting it, my pancreas will shut down and I will become diabetic.
Oy.
But while I am not diabetic and dieting and kicking hormones out of my body, because essentially the hormones, like, spearhead everything. And so they kind of, like, lead the particles that are lost in your body. This is, like, probably medically incorrect, but this is how I understood it.
This is now fact and truth.
Yes.
I do not know this.
Whatever. So the hormones make it all worse.
Okay.
And so for a year and a half, I was off hormones, which with my lifestyle is just great news. And then, so when I make too much insulin, the insulin that doesn't go and do its job, like the extra insulin, just kind of lingers and, like, fucks with your ovaries and, like, on a molecular level, just, like, intercepts your ovulation, and it gave me polycystic ovary syndrome and like all this shit. And so I was finally like, okay, but I still don't want a kid though. So like IUD.
Yeah.
And when I vaguely mentioned it on social media, people were just like, I posted one vague story of like me and my legs in a towel holding my belly going, bye-bye, copper-free cervix. Thanks for your lovely service over the last 28 years.
10-gun salute to you.
Yeah, exactly. High five. And then I got this onslaught of messages within minutes of like women going, like which one are you getting? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Like blah, 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 blah. And so I started, instead of answering all of them individually, which would have taken forever, I just said, okay, I'm going to chronicle this. And I preface it on social media because I'm starting to be very careful with that kind of stuff and not, get on Twitter trial right away or whatever. I was just like, okay, so the next 100 stories are about my fucking cervix and uterus. So if you don't want to know, just
absolutely
swipe left.
Yeah, change the channel.
And strangely, I put on it takes a long time to tell a story within 15-second stories.
Yeah.
And so I was telling them about the experience of, getting the IUD inserted and why copper, because it's the only non-hormonal treatment right now. Treatment, as if it was a fucking sickness that we ovulate. But alternative.
Yeah.
And I just realized over the last couple of years that, as women, we spend most of our lives worrying that we are pregnant, spending fuckloads of money on hormones, which eventually do a lot of damage in our body because now there's hormones in our food too. So it's like fuckloads of hormones where they're not supposed to be.
Right.
And then the alternative is like this unspeakable IUD because it hurts like a fucking bitch. And even my mother that I called, who's like very concerned, she was like, why do you need that much contraception? She's like, still refuses to acknowledge the fact that I have an active sex life. But that's another story. And so she was like, I said, well, yeah, when they put it in, I had a contraction. She was like, how the hell would you know what a contraction is? I was like, because that's
when things
contract.
Move in and out. Like
that's what happens. Yeah. That's what your cervix is made to do. And she's like, oh, interesting. And I was like, I love this. Yay, go mom. But a lot of guys watched my stories till the end, watched every single one of them, and sent me messages because I was like, maybe they're just like swiping and like it looks like they saw it.
Where's your vagina?
Exactly. When's the nudity?
But what do they say?
They were like, this is fascinating. Like, no one ever... I love that. I was like, and like dudes I don't know. Like, it's not like my close friends that I like curated to be woke dudes or whatever. No. It was just like people I don't know. And I find it very interesting. And even guys were like, you'll be fine. And my ex-girlfriend had one because I was like really worried I still haven't had sex.
So that's the next
story.
Critical stage of this.
Yesterday, I put a finger up there and I felt my strings.
And you didn't get like electrocuted? Okay, yes.
That was my main worry, literally. Like electrocuted is exactly the thought I had. I was like, what if I touch it and then it moves the like upper end of my uterus and I want to like crawl and never fucking touch my vagina again? This will really hamper not only my happiness but also my book and also my entire life.
And everything. Oh God.
It's traumatic. But anyway, it went fine.
Good.
I hope it's the same thing with a penis. We'll find out.
It's... we were saying earlier, like, the fact that, periods or everything, like, my kid is asking questions because she's very interested in boobs, and because I don't have boobs and my friends do, so they wear shirts that have a bit of cleavage, and she's always like, boob police, your boobs are showing! It's like... No, that's a societal level, acceptable level of cleavage. You don't want them to wear turtlenecks in the summer. But yeah, so having to explain to her, like, this will eventually, unfortunately, dominate most of your life. And, like, you will plan trips around it. You will plan your wedding around it. You will plan X, Y, and Z around it. Because depending on how bad it is, like, I was very lucky and I never had the type of periods that would knock me out.
Yeah.
My best friend in high school would have to call in sick to school, and remember her dad just being beside himself. But she wasn't faking. Like, she was...
Yeah, she was in actual physical pain.
Agony. And then when I went into labor, so I told someone later what it felt like, and they're like, oh, that's what it feels like when I have a bad period. And I was like, motherfucker.
Yeah.
That is not good. You cannot live like that. But if... We were saying, too, like, if men... had periods. Like,
oh, we would have sorted that shit out.
Right? Because what are our options right now? We've got the Diva Cup, which some of my friends are really into, and I just make this joke always of like, what if I accidentally pull it out and do it like a shot? and I know there's no way I would ever do that, but just having, like, you know, you just do dumb shit in day to day, like, reflex-wise, you're like, that's not right. Like, why did I do that? And I probably wouldn't drink my period blood, but
it's like ashing in my coffee, like,
exactly. Yeah. I was like, fuck. So Diva Cup one, and then tampons, which, like, you know, like
dry vagina, it's nightmare.
Right? Dude, like, remember, like, I still to this day have to crouch down in public stalls, and then I'm always worried, like, if someone looks over and like, what does that woman do? Why do I see her knees right now? But like, I don't, like, that's how it goes.
That's how you do.
But then if it doesn't go in right away, and you're like, okay,
now I've got to pull it out, put it back in on the other side, just to hope that it goes.
Right, or if it gets like squished together.
Oh no!
Or then if you put it in wrong and then you can feel it. And
when you're walking.
Oh my god! Have you ever? I've done it once where you like forgot one in there.
Yeah. No one talks about this, by the way. I was mortified when it happened to me.
Mine looked and smelled like a dead bird when I pulled it out of me. I was like, what? At first I was like, I didn't know what it was, and then I was like, oh my god, how am I alive? Because they always, like, toxic shock syndrome.
How long was yours for?
I don't know. Like a dead bird, like flattened, the worst smell ever. Because it has collected all your inside secrets and
and like your vagina has ladybugs in it for its health. This is like regular, normal, healthy vagina.
Absolutely, but I don't know. Yeah, so I pulled it. I was like, oh god. And even now, you know, like if a period is late, I have to do like a bit of digging. Like, okay, because you know, my kryptonite is jumping into the shower. Sometimes I will forget to take it out before I go in the shower, and then I think
put a new one in.
I think that's probably what happened that time. But I've known of like teenagers who got like toxic shock syndrome and have like yellow eyes, like bats or whatever fucking happens, or you die. But yeah, so that's another option. Birth control, which, you know, like when I first started it, the first one that I took, it was so bad for my skin that I could literally like feel the pimple coming, like boom, 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 and then I would go to the mirror and watch it form and like blossom. So eventually I had to go off that. And yeah, but that is...
See, I was perfectly happy on hormones. I was so good on hormones, except for the fact that it was fucking up the rest of my body. But that when I got off it a year and a half ago, I was like, oh, I've been medicated my whole life. That's what it is. I've been medicated.
And did it feel...
It felt completely different. I felt like a different person. Because I went on hormones when I was 15. This is that generation. You know, you're not having children, like... as a teenager,
and here's how to regulate it, which there is some comfort in kind of being able to predict, but by pounding those hormones in
it's better for your boobs, it's better for your skin, it's better for blah blah blah. This is that era, right? Now we know that's not true, but I was 27 when they were like, nah, quit it. And I was one of those people who kind of like, he was like, oh, luckily like my period's fine, like, but I was medicated the whole time, and then when I stopped, I was like, the first month, I was just like, oh my god, what is happening to me? I was like, something really horrible is happening to me. And I was PMSing. Like, every month, I would not know what was happening to me. Like a fucking retard. Like, dude, count the days. This is what's happening. Yeah. Every time, I'd be like, I just cried to a YouTube commercial about nappies.
I know.
The fuck. And I just never felt that before. And I was like, how did I get to this age? And not know that's what my body's like. That's fucking terrifying.
No, and
now I have to live with a piece of metal in my uterus, which I like to call my bionic uterus, just to make it feel cool.
But IUD, like the concept of it sounds a little bit creepy to me, and it also,
it's awful,
right? And then also then feels like when something's going to be like jabbing in there, like how's that going to work? And
especially like I like deep penetration. I'm not one of those people who's always been like, no, not too far. I'm like, no, do that.
Are there people who do?
Yeah. Well, it's very strange conversations.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess there's that whole world. But yeah, you should be able to do whatever you want to do while also still being safe. And then that's it. Those are our options.
And then I just crossed my mind. I never even thought about it. Is it gonna like cut a condom in half? Like these are the thoughts that you have.
It's like a little tiny laser, like zzz. Yeah. No, I don't want you to be scared, but
no, but that's the thoughts that go through every single fucking girl's head that's going through this. I'm sure. And like we are like, like great, I'm not pregnant. Like,
and then also like,
and then when you want to get pregnant.
right?
That's the whole other thing. Like, oh, your body has to now, like, not be on hormones for the first time ever, or, like, you know, face the fact that actually, for some people, it's not. Like, you spent just, like, 15 years trying not to get pregnant when actually you couldn't. Like, that's, like, my worst nightmare, to find out that I'm infertile.
Well, and that... Yeah, I think it's kind of like, you know, the stories go around where, like, oh, this girl was on birth control her whole life, got married, they were ready to have a family, first month, boom, pregnant. That. So those.
I mean, I have those friends, and I'm super happy for them.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not saying those stories aren't real or aren't great, but the stories that aren't shared, which I have addressed a little bit in some of my, like, serious, sad mom shit, is that the miscarriage is so much more common than we know, and I'm sure it's not a direct link, but if you are an older woman, not, you know, having kids into your 30s, because, you know, life you don't always find the person you want to have kids with until you're older. That's just how life works, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe you weren't ready in so many different ways. Yeah. But yeah, you know, if you've been on birth control for a long time, you've trained your body in a certain way, and, you know, like, I can still feel like I'm 16 at this age, but the parts of my body that need to be juicy and jubilant to create life are not, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, like, I somehow, luckily, first shot out of the gate, or first trying at it, I got pregnant and had my daughter. So lucky, and at the time didn't realize how lucky, and then subsequently, you know, wasn't able to make a pregnancy stick after that. And the doctor, you know, like, I had lovely care and lovely specialist, you know, and they do these terribly invasive flushing out of your insides, and you know, and you just, like, I just was always like, I'm gonna make them so proud of me. That's always, like, in the dentist chair and in every doctor's, I'm like, I'm not gonna flinch, even though this lovely nurse holding my hand, I just want to, like, gnaw her hand off, and just whimper forever. But you know, so it is really hard, and yet, like, and I'm also the belief that social media is not for sad things. I would never share sad news or bad news or vague book about, like, the day I've had. So I didn't talk about it, and then, you know, like most parenting things, like, more and more parenting things are talked about online, and women can, and some in private forums, some in more open, and then it helps you feel less alone and less isolated, and maybe can help you work through some things. But there also are some things where it's like, you know what, if a bunch of strangers hit, you know, sad face on a status that I put about a miscarriage, that wouldn't help me at all. And I feel like it is your right to deal with something privately.
Absolutely.
But I think it's important to make sure you speak to your partner intensively about it, because it is their loss as well. Yeah. To speak to your friends, and just for people to know that, like, it is actually crazy mania that children are created at all. You know, especially for older women, and all the things that can go wrong from, you know, it's not the Look Who's Talking movies. That's what I thought would happen, right? So yeah, I think there's value to talk about that, but there's also, you know, sometimes you just need to, like, crawl into yourself, feel the hurt, like we talked about earlier, and then, you know, like, the thing that got me through all those failed attempts is that I have one versus zero. Like, I can never complain, you know. You think that I thought I wanted, you know, the goal was 2, but, you know, like, it's, you know, it felt like back in the day people were like, bam, 6, 7, like, no problem. But
they were also 19 and never had hormones and didn't have poison food,
right?
So
you know, something is happening. Like, have you been on, like, this is such a lame story, but, like, been on a bus lately?
Been on a bus lately.
But if you see, like, you look at, like, girls who you know are, like, maybe 11, 12, and they have bigger tits than I do, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? There's something in your milk, something in the chicken, something is different. Because when I, again, flashing back to the 80s,
I was the only one with boobs.
Were you the first?
I was that girl.
Okay, so everybody...
First of all, I was a foot taller than everyone else.
So everybody remembers
and then
you.
Boobs.
Everyone remembers you.
Oh, they do.
I went to school, her name was Lindsay, and she got boobs first, and hips first, and, you know, you can have the most progressive kids nowadays, but if you stand out in any way, shape, or form, you are target number one, especially boobs, too.
That's the thing. Luckily, I don't feel like it was bad. There was really bad moments. I don't often speak about, like, middle school. Maybe that's another episode. But, like, I luckily didn't complex me. It didn't instill in me things that would linger. Like, those moments were shitty, but it didn't linger, because high school was awesome, and that I discovered my weirdos, and I was just like, yes,
good,
great. But yeah, I just think, like, in general, like, to go back to the point about, you know, like, whether it's good ovulation, shitty ovulation, miscarriages, pregnancies, giving birth, like, all of these topics, because God forbid we don't offend some men who can't listen to that, or some women, to be fair.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just not okay with silence. Like, I'm okay with, like you were saying, not divulging what you're not ready to share, because you're dealing and processing, and of course, like, no, like, everyone has their own healing path, but not getting uncomfortable because like, not doing it because it feels uncomfortable, not sharing, even though you feel better when you do. Like, I felt 100 times better when people were like, oh my God, when I got my IUD, this was my experience, and be careful, your first shit is going to be terrifying. And I was just like, the doctor never told me that.
Well, exactly. And that's, like, I think when, new moms also have that, like,
the first shit's going to feel shitty.
Oh my God. Why is the first shit so devastating? Okay, so after IUD, like, I didn't know that. But yeah, by sharing that, because, but I think there's also that weird thing where, like, like, you think it's an IUD, it's the same. But no, every body is so different.
So different.
And you could react and have a wonderful experience, no problem at all. And some people have to take them out.
Yeah.
And I think they feel like failures. It's like, your body didn't... It didn't work. And it didn't work.
I think the more we talk, the better it is. I've talked about this with Sunny, who was on one of my episodes, a really good friend of mine. She was like, I went to the hospital after I had sex. I really hope that doesn't happen to you. And to be fair, it probably won't. But FYI... it wasn't like, oh my God, you will go to the... the more we share, the more we have these... Well, if that happens, don't be scared. You're not the only one. But it probably won't. But if it does, like, that aspect of, like... Absolutely. We're not telling you that these are going to things that are happen, or these are things that are going to matter to you as a person. But the more information we have from genuine, vulnerable, and caring friends or strangers...
Absolutely.
I think the better we are as a society.
Exactly. If your experiences that shaped you, or made you laugh, or made you cry, or whatever, if somehow they can help someone else, or
that's why we want to be read and laughed at.
Oh, exactly.
Nice little bow.
If we had still wine left, we would have cheers, but it's fine.
I know. We finished the wine. Well, I had a great time talking to you today.
So did I. Thank you so much. I think we've covered
a lot of ground.
Hopefully it was
one of the longer episodes. I think so.
Okay, good.
But if you guys want to reach out, I will be linking all of Brooke's blogging, Twitter, Instagram, whatever else she wants me to add in the description. And if you have any questions, comments, or whatever you want, you can tweet at us happily.
Absolutely.
And as for me, thanks again for tuning in to Running Wild with Christine. Please rate, subscribe, like, follow, blah, blah, blah. All of that, all of those things that make me feel like I am important and loved. Just do them. And have a great weekend in the meantime, and I will speak to you next Friday. Bye. The podcast you just heard was published with Anchor. Got something you want to say to the creator of this show? Send them a voice message using the Anchor app, free for iOS and Android.